This podcast is part of the C-Suite Radio Network, turning the volume up on business.
Welcome to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer. Join us as Deb talks with her guests, experts in their fields, as they share real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to have so much fun because we're going to be talking about a subject that is a marketing subject, but it applies to everyone. Anyone who has a business can use this technique and really should be thinking about it. It doesn't matter if you are a one-person business operating out of just your garage, your basement, or if you're, a company that does millions, billions of dollars worth of business a year. This is something that we all need to learn something about. So please join me in welcoming my guest today, Tom Augenthaler. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Deb, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
This is going to be so much fun. So let me tell people a little bit about you before we jump in. So as I said, today's guest is one of the top 50 practitioners of the exciting digital strategy known as influencer marketing. Tom Augenthaler consults with companies large and small to help them leverage influencers to improve their ROI. Since 2008, he's been working with well-known brands such as HP, Time, Adobe, and SAP Ariba to raise brand awareness, generate leads, and outflank competitors. Again, please welcome Tom Augenthaler to our program.
I'm really thrilled to be here, Deb. Thank you.
Well, let's kind of take a little, backwards trend here for a moment. How is it that you discovered that this is your passion in life?
Well, it's kind of interesting you asked that because it happened by mistake.
A happy mistake. Isn't that what the painting guy, all of a sudden I drew a blank, a happy accident.
Yeah, happy accident, right. It wasn't a good time in which I found all of this out because it really occurred around 2008, 2009, when, the economy was getting shaky and then it really started to go down. Remember when Obama was coming in and Bush was going out and all the problems with the banks and all that stuff. It was really a lot of problems. And I was at HP at the time, and I was in their PR department for one of their divisions, and I handled consumer laptops worldwide. So any kind of an announcement that went out about some laptop product, I was involved with, often helping to structure the strategy and the tactics around announcing that product. So anyway, the problem was that a lot of publications that we dealt with were going out of business. They were closing up. Journalists were jumping ship and they were getting other jobs. And it was really kind of a crazy time. So we used to sit around in the department and talk about things like, well, who are we going to go to to get the word out about our products? Because the publications we've been working with for years are going out of business. What do we do? So that's when I started looking into bloggers, because there was this growing trend of people blogging online and then blogging about specific topics. So one of the topics, fortunately, was about technology and technology products, because as there's a lot of iPhone aficionados or laptop people or whatever it is. There's people have got their little things they like to follow and really get to know and then publish about or write about. So I started to try and hone in on those people, and we ended up working with about 10 or 12 of them at first as a test, and it worked out really well. So I just kept doing it. And then I noticed that the content they were putting out was actually, in a lot of cases, better than the content that publications were putting out.
Interesting.
It was longer. It was more in depth. It was to the point. It was really about that person's experience with the product in environments where they just took it, like to go to a coffee shop. They'd write about it. They'd say, I worked on this presentation in this coffee shop. The Wi-Fi was good, the laptop took a lot of, shaking and everything. I mean, whatever it was that they decided to talk about, it was really positive stuff. So at that point, I was like, boy, this is going to be something that's going to take off. This is going to become its own discipline. So I ended up leaving HP, joining a small consultancy that focused just on influencer marketing. and did that for many years before going off on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And and one of the things I helped set up when I joined that consultancy was HP ended up coming to us and saying, look, we want to set up an influencer marketing program. It was not the same division that I worked in before, but it was enterprise division.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all about servers and network computing and enterprise storage and things like that. So we actually sat down and scoped out a vision and a strategy and then executed it for them for many years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really a wild and woolly time. And
Right.
it was like Wild West. When they talk about Wild West, as a comparison, it really was. And to a degree, it still is, but it's a little more organized now than it was then.
Right. Well, let's start with a definition. What is an influencer?
That's a great question, and it's one that really people don't ask enough of.
Right. Or they're very confused about it.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that, because there are all kinds of influencers, right? I mean, there are, for instance, there are celebrities,
Right.
there are book authors, right, are influencers. Well-respected people in their different professions are influencers, because very often they speak, they go to speaking event, they speak on behalf of their company, they run workshops, they publish white papers, then there's Instagrammers, right? There's people on Instagram who've built substantial followings of hundreds of thousands,
Hundreds
even
of
millions.
thousands. I know. I'm like, really?
There's a guy, a podcaster, a fellow podcaster named Joe Rogan. I think he's got 4 million, followers at this point. It's pretty astounding. That's bigger when you think about it than some TV networks get on a nightly basis. Right. So all
which shows that they spend millions of dollars a year on.
Exactly. So all of these people are influencers. It's just a matter of figuring out which ones are right for you.
Right.
And that's all going to be determined upon your goal and your business and what you're trying to achieve. So.
Well, and we were talking before the program started that a lot of times we think of it in a negative light because we see some of the things that go wrong, and it tends to be more along the lines of the celebrity type of people, and we think, oh my gosh, how can, a 16-year-old girl have 2 million followers that watch her put on makeup? And then she gets paid for it. Yeah, and we're thinking, what the heck? What is, as my mother would say, what is this world coming to? But it is the same thing as if, the one person down the street that, talks about, hey, you've got this great thing, it's a matter of scale, all of these things. And part of it has definitely come about because of technology, because of social media. It used to be that you got your influencers just from your local community, and now you can reach millions of people around the world. And so, it's the same thing, but it just, it scales up.
Exactly. It's just the technology has enabled regular, ordinary people to collect audiences around their passion.
Right.
And now they don't have to wait to become a celebrity in a traditional method. Usually it was movie stars, rock stars, whatever, you name it. And you had to get famous first, and then you were influential. Now you don't even have to do that.
You could be the 16-year-old girl putting on makeup. You
can be the 16-year-old who does makeup every day on her YouTube channel or Instagram channel, and now they are influential. They are, because their followers are going to follow their advice and perhaps even purchase product that they recommend. So it's a very powerful platform that it's become.
It is. And as I said, it ends up in many cases with a negative connotation. We look at, say, Kim Kardashian, and people are like, oh, and then you have ones, you have, I was researching before we started the program, and I went to, of course, the ultimate source, Wikipedia. And, and it said that, the first celebrity type of spokespeople were the royal families back in the 1700s. They would drink somebody's ale, and they'd say, oh, hey, King George likes our ale, whatever it was. And the first true, really big name that a lot of people recognized was Michael Jordan. When he started really working for Nike, I guess it was, and and promoting their products, then people started thinking, wow, but then we have things, good or bad. Let's people like Colin Kaepernick. Some people, of course, really think what he's doing is great. Other people disagree. And so that's sometimes where the influencers, can have, a situation that comes up where, maybe they started as just the celebrity spokesperson, and again, whether they're celebrity of having 10 followers or 10 million, and it morphs into what their personality is. And to me, that's not a bad thing. Because when I see someone who is endorsing something and clearly they are just paid to do it, I'm like, whatever. Like, I'm sorry, I don't believe Matthew McConaughey drives a Lincoln. He might, but yeah. And so when they put their personalities into it, I think that maybe that makes that more real. Is that maybe what happens?
Yeah, that's what people in my industry call authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when somebody's authentic. So when you go back to that example you brought up about the 16-year-old on Instagram with 1 million followers who follow her makeup tips and whatever, that's authentic because that's
Right.
what she cares about,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that young lady cares about that, and she's passionate about it, and she likes to try out new products and like different looks and whatever else, and talk about skin tone and everything. Well, it's easier to relate to that person if they really care about it.
Right.
The Matthew McConaughey thing, I'm the same as you. I watch these commercials with him and I'm like, yeah, he's kind of cool dude, but do I believe he's going out to like drive his Lincoln and leave the party? I don't think so.
No.
I see him in a Ferrari or a Mercedes or
Right.
something else. I don't know what, but but that's a commercial.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear that that's a commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why ads are really not trusted today. Statistically, trust in ads and in brands in general has been declining.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why brands are now looking to influencers, whether the brand is a small brand or a large brand, doesn't really matter. They're looking for that authenticity to be able to leverage that and then reach the target market to influence them.
Right.
So they're now having to go through these ordinary people who are authentic to make a connection.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we expect an ad to say something good about the product or service. I mean, it's supposed to. It's not going to say, "Oh, eat here, we're okay."
Right.
Buy our car. It'll get you where you need to go. And
True.
So, that's where the authenticity does come in. When we know somebody is truly passionate about something, even if we disagree with them, we're like, oh, okay, good for them.
Yeah, they're putting a stake in the ground and making a stand about something.
Mm-hmm.
So Kaepernick, for instance, he's a very polarizing figure. Mm-hmm. People either love him or they hate him. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't know if there's a lot of people in between.
Right.
Kim Kardashian,
Mm-hmm.
She's got millions of followers. She's built it up over time. She's built many businesses. I mean, she's not only an influencer and a celebrity, but she's a businesswoman too. Mm-hmm. So she's building brands and doing all of that. So she's a very intelligent lady. Mm-hmm. Again, but she's a polarizing figure.
Right.
Right. People either love her or they hate her. Mm-hmm. Right. But polarization is not bad.
Right.
Polarization is what attracts
mm-hmm.
the people you want to attract you, and then repels the people that you really don't want anyway.
Right.
So it ends up being a powerful tool. Mm-hmm. Where the ads come in, again, it's like when McConaughey's driving the Lincoln, he's never saying, "Oh, it didn't brake well when I came up to the stoplight." Or he's not saying, "Gee, on the highway, it doesn't handle as nice as, gee, the Mercedes does," right? If he did, then the ad would be something completely different. Right?
It'd be a Mercedes ad.
it would be Mercedes ad, or but when you read something or watch something an influencer talks about, and that influencer's being authentic about it, they will often throw in negatives. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, this happened to me with HP, mm-hmm. With the laptops, they might say, well, the keyboard really didn't respond as well to this or that. Well, I didn't look at that negative as being bad.
Right.
I looked at it as being, well, that they're just being genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're genuine like that, that's going to help drive the message, actually, and that's actually going to help build their authenticity is bolstered by that.
Right. Right.
And I didn't find that it hurt the laptops at all, actually. What we did was we took that feedback back to the organization and said, look, there are complaints out there about the keyboard, the size, or whatever it is, and can you adjust it for the next model that comes out? So they would actually take that into consideration, and they've actually made changes, modifications based on what some of the influencers have
Right.
provided in terms of feedback. So that was really beneficial. It was positive, productive.
Well, and of course, then you're also getting feedback from the people who are responding to that influencer. And so, the 16-year-old makeup thing, maybe a bunch of people post in there, love the makeup, but can't get the container open. Okay. So you go back and you go back to your design team and you say, wait a minute, we're having trouble with this. The people are saying, and then of course the cool thing is if they mention it, so then the influencer says, we heard you. We knew that this was a problem, so it got fixed.
Exactly. So again, that depends on the attitude of the organization, whether they're going to take that in. And at first, HP was a little like, oh, who are these people? Why should we listen to them?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they were spending money on focus groups to determine the same thing.
And it is the same thing.
Right. And what I said to them was, well, what you're getting here is better feedback because these people like to use laptop products. They like this stuff and they like to talk about it, and they like to show other people what they know about it. So take the information back and use it to your advantage. And they ended up doing that, fortunately, and everybody looked at it as a positive eventually. So that was good. That was really nice.
Yeah. And we do love it when it is the everyday person as opposed to the celebrity. It was funny when I was making all my connections with you on social media, I noticed that you and I are both connected to Dave Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Colorado, so knew Dave. Dave's been on the program, and he does reviews, and that is what part of how he makes his living. And and people recognize that. I mean, either he is paid and or he gets the product for free. I mean, let's just face it, that's the way this happens. It is nice if people just out of the goodness of their heart say, hey, this is fabulous. But Dave is somebody who reviews things, and he also responds to questions. I've sent him questions before and said, oh my gosh, I have X and I can't get it to do whatever, and he'll respond. So, he has truly nurtured being an influencer.
Yeah, Dave is somebody that this is funny you bring him up because I think I was in, I was living in Chicago at the time, I think, and I went to an internet conference at the time, and Dave was one of the speakers. And I always remember Dave because he was one of the first people to set up an internet mall online.
Right.
Where shops could come and then rent space on his mall to talk about, to attract buyers. And I always thought that was kind of cool. Dave was always a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah, he is. He's one of those real forward-thinking people.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I ended up working with him a bit through the years for, different technology products, including him in influencer programs, to review them, whatever else. And, Dave knows the whole deal. I mean, if he's getting a laptop for free to review, he's going to tell you that. He's going to say, hey, the company gifted this to me. Yep. I am going to review this. I'm going to really put it through its paces. You're going to know everything I know about it, and you can make your own decision about whether it's the kind of product you want.
And he doesn't hesitate to say bad.
No, he doesn't.
And I think that's one of the cool things about any influencer is, as we were saying, when they don't hesitate to say, you know what, this doesn't work. And the people who work with them know that you're taking that risk of them saying, no.
Yeah, see, this is one of the key factors to doing influencer marketing well, is that when you're approaching influencers like Dave and you've got a product and you'd like them to review it, you don't just reach out to them and say, hey, Dave, I've got this new product, would you like to review it? And then if he says yes, just send it to him and then hope for the best. I mean, that's not what you do.
Right.
What you do is you get on the phone with Dave. You say, hey, look, I'm gonna send you the product. It's gonna, we're gonna gift it to you. Please say that on your program, for FTC considerations. Let's be upfront. And then what I'd like to do is have a phone call with you and kind of walk through the product and the kind of market it's meant for. Because if you just give somebody a product like that,
Right.
Some laptops, for instance, are designed for a business person in mind. So it's a road warrior. It's somebody it's going to be small, sleek. It's going to have enough, it's going to have enough memory. It's going to have enough, CPU power to be able to just do what they need to do. But it's not going to be for video editing.
Right. It's not a gamer model.
It's not a gamer model. Right. So you've got to make all of that very clear. And the way to do that is to get on the phone with the influencer, walk them through it and say, look, this is the target market that we've identified for this. This is, here are its positives. If you're going to try to use it for these other things, it's not going to meet your expectations, right? So let them know that up front so that, they're not dinging you on something that they shouldn't be dinging you on, right? So
and in their review, you want them to say, this is not a laptop for gamers.
Exactly. You want to hone it down so that those people in their audience that are your target market are going to know that it's for them, right? So that's part of it. You've got to educate the influencer about the product. So I would do that for whatever product it is, a beauty product, a tech product, whatever it happens to be. You've got to let them know what it's about and who it's for,
right?
Because no product is perfect for everybody. It just so.
Well, and every reviewer needs that little bit of direction. I always tell people on LinkedIn, when you're asking for a recommendation, give them a little guidance, and granted, there are some people who will say, write it for me. Tell me what you want me to say. Okay, then that, but, for example, when I'm working with people who are in the job market and I'm saying, okay, you need to go back to people you used to work with. Just don't say, hey, Tom, give me a recommendation, because you're going, I worked with her. And so then what happens is you get this, Deb was a great person to work with. She did her job on time. But if I say, hey, Tom, give me a recommendation about the time that we worked on Project X back in 2014, then you've got the context so that the review and or the recommendation actually makes sense. And so, the same thing is with influencers. You want to give them a little bit of context without telling them what to say, because let's be honest, if you're telling them what to say, that's an ad. Even if they're just typing it, that's not authentic. Now they might come pretty close to thinking that, but don't do it for them.
That's one of the things that comes up when you've mentioned earlier in our conversation here about negative things that get said about influencers. That's one of the things that comes up. It's usually there's two types of stories that come out about influencer marketing. The first is, oh my gosh, look, this person totally went off the rails, and they started yelling and screaming in some parking lot, or they demanded something from some hotel owner because they're a travel influencer, and the owner posted this online, and now the media's got a hold of it. Oh, these influencers are all out of control, right? And then the other half, the other side of that is the other side of the coin, is where all of these stories about how much money people are making using influencers, right? So it's like, oh, you get a 650% ROI using influencers as opposed to other digital strategies. Well, I mean, that's a misleading number. Because there's a lot of different factors that go into that. Well, what was the industry? What was the kind of product? What were the influencers? So there's a whole bunch of different things that come to mind. But it's very polarizing. So it's it's people like to complain about, oh, these influencers, they're so, they're so full of themselves. And then on the other half, you've got all this talk about how much money's being made, and it's very misleading. So and really the truth is in the middle.
Right.
You're going to have some bad apples out there. Yes, I've run into some. And then there are situations where the program just doesn't work out that well. The campaign didn't work that well. And then you've got to go back and do a forensic analysis on it and figure out, well, what was it that failed?
Right.
right? What was it that didn't make it? Was it did we choose the wrong
Hmm.
influencers? Did they not reach the target market that we wanted? Was it our fault, meaning the marketing team? Did we not think about the correct CTA, or was there too much involved? Whatever it happens to
Hmm.
be, not every program goes right. So you've got to dissect it, figure out what happened, and so
Right.
the next time around you don't do that.
Hmm.
Right.
Well, and so much of this, all of it, really does rely on the basic marketing things. You have to know who your audience is, where they are reached, all of these various things, and then choose the influencer that is appropriate. I work with senior living communities. So if, say, we did an influencer campaign that featured millennials, you're going to be like, "Oh, that doesn't make sense," because, but if it's somebody like me who's not a millennial, I'm a baby boomer. And so if I were talking about, hey, this is a great community where I want my mother to live, my father to live, whatever, it's much more believable than somebody in their late 20s, because somebody in their late 20s is for one thing, they're thinking about grandma or grandpa, and
Yeah.
and they're not that decision maker, because that comes back to it too, is, I might be the decision maker for that, and so it is, again, more authentic when I'm saying something about it.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So you brought up a few different things there. So for senior living communities, if that was your client, a senior living community, the first thing I would think of is what you just pointed out. You want to find influencers who are of the right age group
Mhm.
to be even talking about this. Because
Right.
somebody who's 28 years old, they're thinking about going out and
Mhm.
going to parties and their career and where they want to live and do they want to buy a house. All these different, it's a whole different set of
Mhm.
life issues. Now when you're talking about a senior living community, although you've been all through that
Mhm.
before, been there, done that. Now
Right.
you're looking at different phase of life. So you want to find people who are in the right age demographic.
Mhm.
Then you also want to find people that who writes about this, who
Mhm.
talks about this. Are there people that have YouTube channels that talk about
Mhm.
this to try and help other people figure these things out? Because these questions are not easy to figure out.
Right.
I've watched my own parents go through this with their parents, meaning my grandparents, and now I'm watching my parents, you know, talk about these issues. So it's a very contextual,
Mhm.
and you've got to be very mindful of that. So and then the other thing is you don't need 10,000 influencers to be talking about this. You might
Right.
just need five or
Mhm.
six, a handful, maybe a dozen, depending upon what you're really looking to
Mhm.
achieve. Most companies are using influencer marketing to build brand awareness because
Right.
there's so much competition out there
Mhm.
right now through ads, digital advertising, different digital marketing strategies. So influencers can help cut through all that noise because it's person to person.
Mhm.
People buy from people. They don't buy necessarily from brands.
Right.
So they connect more with people, which is what we've been talking about
Mhm.
here. So at the senior living community thing, I'd look for influencers that talked about these topics, that had some kind of regular cadence of content that came out, had a quality following that I could identify. And it doesn't have to be 10 million people. It could be a smaller, very
Right.
focused audience. Maybe it's just a few thousand people on a
Mhm.
podcast, that talks about these types of issues and stuff. That's perfect.
Right.
That's what you want to get into. You
And
want
you
to, if
really
you can,
want that because you've only got, let's say, a facility that has 70 beds. You know?
yeah, yeah, that might be that
Mhm.
issue too.
Mhm.
And then there's, does Medicare pay for this or whatever, Social Security and all these others. This is very complicated stuff.
Right.
And it's not easy. It's not like, well, should I just buy this phone over that phone?
Mhm.
Or should I get this app over that app, or this gaming PC over that gaming PC, or whatever you're talking about? These questions are a lot more
Mhm.
involved.
Right.
So you're going to
Right.
probably look for influencers who really delve into the topic and talk about these really kind of hard issues that,
Right.
they're they're not easy to
Mhm.
discuss or easy to figure out.
Mhm. And one of the things that, it never even really occurred to me until I was reading some of your information and then just what we're talking about just now is the fact that, as I said at the very start of the program, anyone can use an influencer. It doesn't have to be the big brands. It can be something much smaller, and it can be something very industry specific. I love in one of your blog posts, you were talking about getting an influencer for the funeral industry. Now that is pretty darn specific. But if you get somebody that is an influencer in that industry, it really is worth its weight in gold.
It is, and I talk about the funeral industry because, well, it goes back to my son is friends with another boy in his grade, and that other boy's dad is CEO of a rather large funeral company.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they call it a funeral company. I think they call it something else.
Yeah, there's some fancy
End of life. I don't know, whatever it is. They put some artful term around it. But anyway, he and I were having a conversation one day just about this, about marketing and everything else. And he was asking, well, are there influencers in the industry? I said, sure there are. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can find influencers that write about the funeral industry, now you're going to find two types. You're going to find people that write about the industry that are in the industry, mm-hmm. and then you're going to find people that are more ordinary people, mm-hmm. that talk about end of life issues like right. that. Mm-hmm. And they will talk about what it means to go through the process of burying a loved one, right? So they're going to talk about
almost more like a testimonial. Here's how they were to work with type of thing.
Right. It's like, well, what was that company like to work with, or mm-hmm. that funeral home, whatever. But the point is that you can get niche down. You can get really, really niche specific with influencers. You just have to look harder. Mm-hmm. It's not a matter of just going to Instagram and finding somebody there. Now, I was just speaking at a conference in LA last month, and I gave the example of, because in downtown LA there's all these different scaffolding and things going up. They're doing all this building like crazy. And I said to the audience, I said, look, if you're in a business that deals with heavy machinery and equipment that needed to build skyscrapers and big buildings, you're not going to Instagram to find your influence.
Right. Yeah. Because the right. people aren't there looking.
Right. Nobody buys, a Komatsu excavator because of a post on Instagram that says, wow, this is fun to drive. Right. Nobody does
greatest, that. Whatever it is I've ever used.
I don't know how much those cost, but they're probably a few million bucks.
Right.
And if you're a company that looks to purchase that kind of equipment, well, there's a certain sales cycle involved. Mm-hmm. And, there's probably salespeople that company deals with before, so there's a whole different thing. But you can find influencers that can help that every portion of the sales cycle, every portion of the sales funnel, from the awareness, the top of the funnel to the middle of the funnel to the very bottom, where it comes down to the purchasing decision. Mm-hmm. There are influencers that can help nudge the person in your direction. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of finding those people, but it just takes a little time, care, and you've got to really know, like you said before, your target market. Who is that market, right? I mean, we all talk about target markets. Oh, I need males between the ages of 35 and 50. Well, that's really not a target market. That's just a demographic market, right? You need to find out, what are those males mm-hmm. in that age group? Mm-hmm. Are they African American? Are they Caucasian? Maybe it doesn't matter, but maybe they have a certain income level, mm-hmm. right? So you've got to really start whittling it down to figure out, do these guys like to drive cars? Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't like to drive cars. Maybe they like to be outdoors guys and go mm-hmm. out and hike and everything else. So you've got to really figure that out, and it takes a bit of time and effort to do that. And what's your goal?
Right.
Are you just trying to raise awareness? Mm-hmm. Are you trying to generate leads? What are you trying to do here? So mm-hmm. if you figure it out and you just put a plan in place, it all becomes much clearer.
Right. And that is one of the hardest things to do, especially for a small business owner, because they don't want to leave anyone out. I've talked before on the program when we've asked people, who is your target market? And they smile and they say, everyone. No,
Yeah.
You know? And
Surprise
even for the big
business,
brands,
everyone.
their target is not everyone. And we mentioned the fact that sometimes influencers are used to weed people out. Colin Kaepernick, again, one of those examples where I'm watching on social media on Facebook with people saying, "I'll never buy Nike, but I never bought Nike to start with." Okay, well, then Nike didn't care. And so, and we see those things all the time where it is kind of used to weed somebody out. And we do that. We should be doing that with our own, our marketing all the time. We're not marketing to everyone. So how are we defining it to get the right people?
Exactly. And there's a process involved in
Mhm.
trying to figure that out. And I'll tell you, even big companies at times have a difficult time figuring that
Mhm.
out. And they spend a lot of
Right.
time and money on consultants to
Mhm.
help them figure that out. Because it's not always so clear cut,
No.
especially when a company starts adding products and services to
Mhm.
its portfolio. Well, now they are expanding the target
Mhm.
market. And then they have to segment it out,
Mhm.
and they have to figure out, well, how are we going to market to this segment as opposed to that segment? Now, from a smaller business point of view, a classic mistake is just what you pointed out. Well, we market to everybody who wants to come in and buy something. Well, that's really not true,
Right.
right? Because if you walk into any shop in any mall or any little shop anywhere, I mean, there is a certain market that they're going after, and it's usually pretty clear by the products
Right.
that they've got out and that
Mhm.
they're selling. So for instance, I worked with a jewelry company here last year in Houston, and the one of the challenges they face is they're trying to do so much at once, right? And they've got a very limited staff,
Mhm.
right? They don't have a lot of people, but they're trying to do lots of stuff. So it really helps to the overwhelm, right? To cut
Mhm.
down on the overwhelm, focus on the target market, focus on those people that come in and buy, notice who they are.
Right.
Yeah, right, and keep records of that.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, if you notice, oh, it's all younger people between the ages of, 18 and 25, or, middle-aged people
Mhm.
between the ages of 35 and 45, or mainly women in that age. Now you're starting to narrow it down,
Mhm.
and now you can start to really market to those people a little bit more effectively.
Mhm.
Now, one of the things I talked to the jewelry company about was, here in Houston, I said to them, you should own Houston.
Mhm.
You should own the Houston market. Once you get beyond the Houston, then you could start thinking, to Austin. Then you can
Right.
start thinking Dallas. Then you can start thinking Beaumont. Then you can
Yeah.
start
You're
thinking
not thinking
Galveston.
New York as your
Right. I'm
next
not
step.
thinking New York, LA, I mean, no. Here, people, when they buy, for instance, an engagement ring, it's a very personal process,
Mhm.
I find, because that's what my wife and I did. We
Mhm.
went to somebody, we sat down, we got educated. I don't know the first thing about diamonds,
Mhm.
right? But I mean, there's a whole thing you got to learn about diamonds: cut,
Mhm.
clarity, weight, whatever. And you've got to figure out, well, okay, do we want to spend this amount of money, or do we want to spend that amount of money?
Mhm.
And you kind of figure it out with your budget and everything
Mhm.
else. And what these guys do that I mentioned, that they sit down with you and they personally walk through the whole process. They
Mhm.
educate you, right?
Right.
But I said to them, one of the things you can do to own Houston is to work with influencers who are based here in Houston,
Right.
who have large or substantial influencer, have a large following on something like Instagram or something,
Mhm.
and work with them. What you do is you don't give them the jewelry, but you lend them the jewelry for the
Right.
photo shoots
Mhm.
they're doing, because they're always doing some kind of photo shoot.
Mhm.
Here I am, having coffee with my friend, or and here's my necklace, the dress or whatever. Weave your product into all of that. You're going to have to pay them, obviously, to do that, but you can work something out that's
Right.
probably pretty affordable. And when they mention your jewelry in their posts, what you're doing, you're really building that brand
Mhm.
awareness, right? Now you're really catering to that market in a way that you're not through your traditional marketing, which is sending out flyers and doing whatever else they're doing, right?
Mhm.
So now you're really trying to approach them on a personal level, because
Mhm.
people are going to look at that influencer's account and say, wow, I like the way she's dressed there, right?
Right.
Hey, where'd you get the, and they'll even contact the influencer saying, where'd you get the dress?
Mhm.
How much was it? Everything else. And, now the influencers are savvy enough to know, here's where I got it.
Mhm.
Here, this is where this is the price point. And they can do the same with the jewelry. Here, go to this jewelry place, and they can fix you up with this, right? And they can even do custom jewelry for you. So that's what a smaller businesses can start to look at. Think about your local market, and really think about owning your local market first before New York and LA and Chicago and all that stuff.
Well, and again, it comes back to, picking the right influencer. If you're, the jewelry store that appeals to kind of mid-level people, then having the top pitcher from the Houston Astros, who makes millions of dollars a year. Do the Houston Astros still exist?
Hey, Deb, come on.
Go Rockies.
We won 2017 World Series. We might do it again this year.
This is true. But, having somebody of that level pitching it, then the immediate assumption is it must be an expensive place. But if you have somebody else who, again, maybe they just have 10,000 followers on Instagram, but they're who you want, they're representative of who you want to reach. That's the important thing. But yeah, if you've got a top level product, then you might want that top level influencer.
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to do. People immediately think that if Kim Kardashian can wear my product, I'm going to be set. And all these people come in with that. Nothing could be further from the truth, right? Just because Kim does that, or some Astros guy has your watch on, doesn't mean that it's going to just explode and everything. That's a misperception,
right?
And that's a misperception going back for a long time now. Celebrities have been paid to wear all sorts of things. We know that, watches and drive cars.
Just look at like one of the awards programs with who are you wearing? I mean, that's one of the first questions that they for the women especially. And who are you wearing today?
Yes, because it's an advertisement at that point, right? But that doesn't mean that what that does is it's brand awareness to me, because it's like if you see an attractive celebrity on the red carpet before they're going into some something like, some award ceremony.
The Oscars, yeah,
the Oscars or something like that. That's to say, hey, you're wearing Oscar de la Renta, right? Wow, hey, I like that dress. Maybe I'll think Oscar de la Renta next time I go to Macy's or something, or whatever it is, But you're not going to say, oh, that dress, I have to have that dress. I think that's pretty rare, or somebody to say, wow, I have to have that dress, and I have to, because a lot of times those are custom made.
Right.
Those celebrities, because it's a display. It's something that's sort of supposed to pop.
Right. It's not off the rack.
Right. It's not off the rack. It's meant to elevate the brand in the mind of the viewer. Right. So there's a specific purpose to that. It's not like, Kim Kardashian doesn't come strolling up the red carpet wearing, hey, I got this off the rack at Macy's. No, that just doesn't happen. Right. I mean, that would seem odd, wouldn't it, at this point? I mean, she could probably pull it off, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because she would, and there actually have been times where celebrities have done that, but they've spun it in a way where it's like, oh, okay, well, this is the way to do it. But yeah, they know exactly what they're doing, and I think that's the other thing is, a true influencer really does know what they're doing, and they're going to track it. So they're going to be able to tell you, hey, Tom, we talked about your product in, this blog post. We got 25 questions about it. We had 5 people that said, hey, they liked it, because of course they want you to come back to them. So they should be showing you the results as well as you should be tracking them yourself.
Well, what you're pointing out there is true. A savvy influencer is somebody who really regards it as a bit of a business to be an influencer. Is going to look at it that way. They're not just going to leave it to you on your own to figure out the engagement and everything. They're going to report back and say, look, this didn't work out. Or this one really this one took off. I mean, I got 50 questions about this particular scarf you supplied to me, and now they're all asking questions. Look at it. You can even see it on the feed, and then I'm getting questions, DMs, direct messages saying, hey, where did you get that, and everything else. So the influencer that you're working with should be able to supply that information. That's what's called engagement, right? So that's something that's become much more prominent today, is looking for quality engagement, not just likes, or retweets or reshares, whatever, which is which is fine, but they want to see comments.
Mhm.
They want to see actual inquiries, of some sort or another about it, right? Some sort of a
Because it's really easy to share, to retweet, to whatever. And
Yeah, you
so
can do
that,
that
that
without
really
even
does
thinking.
make it somewhat meaningless.
Exactly. So what you're really looking for is that quality engagement, about the product, about the brand and everything else. And then you should be able to take that back in your business and say, hey, the scarf really did well.
Mhm.
This one didn't with the influencers, but this one did.
Mhm.
So let's double down on that with
Mhm.
the influencers. Maybe we'll
Right.
give them something similar the next time.
Mhm.
This other one, we have to figure out, maybe that sells better in the shop,
Mhm.
but it doesn't do well with an influencer. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that's a crummy product.
Right.
It just means that maybe for whatever reason with that influencer didn't do well, maybe we'll try it with a different
Mhm.
influencer who has a slightly different take on things. So you can experiment and get creative. And I think that the major brands do this. They try things out. They know after a period of time, oh, this kind of beauty product is going to work well with, the 16-year-old that we talked about on Instagram. But the 28-year-old who has a YouTube channel over here likes to use this kind of product instead. So it's all about, figuring that out. And that's, to me, part of the fun.
Right.
If
Oh,
it's all
yeah.
just pure data, it would be like kind of dry looking at spreadsheets all day trying to figure this stuff out. But this is the human element.
Mhm.
The influencer is going to really gel with certain things, and the audience is going to gel
Mhm.
with certain things too. You just need to figure that out a little
Mhm.
bit.
Right. Well, let's talk more about how does somebody find an influencer? Because we're thinking, okay, this sounds great, but I don't even know who to ask. How do we find that influencer?
Well, there's first, let's again dial it back and figure out. You got to ask yourself, your business, what
Mhm.
is it, right? What is your business? What goal do you want to achieve, right? Do I just want to get more awareness about my products out there? The brand. I'm building my brand. I want to be well known in like the LA market, for instance.
Mhm.
So I'm operating in LA. I want everybody to know about me in the LA market. What do I need to do that, right?
Mhm.
What influencers do I need to work with there? So let's say you're a small fashion brand or something. Well, the first place I would look is platforms where those people operate. So meaning the influencers. So
Right.
that's going to be Instagram and YouTube mostly. It's got to be visual.
Okay.
Very difficult to write about on a blog post about fashion. I mean, you
Mhm.
could do it from an industry
Mhm.
perspective, but if you're going to talk about it from a personal, I'm dressing up in this particular outfit, that's better done through video and
Right.
picture.
Yeah. I want to see what that
Yes.
outfit
I
looks like.
want to see, right?
Mhm.
I want to see the person in it. I want to see them in the different environments. I want to see them having coffee and tea, out by the Champs-Elysees in Paris or something. I want to see all of that, right? And then in my mind, I can put together whether that's going to be a good fit. So you look for the platform specific. You go for like Instagram and YouTube, anything that's visual. So Twitter and LinkedIn are not really going to be for you. Facebook might be good too.
Right. Mhm.
Facebook would be good too, but Instagram is very visual,
Mhm.
right? You've got the stories, you've got the photos and the posts, you've got lots of things to look for. Now to find them, there's a few different methods. One, you can just put in a hashtag and search under the hashtag
Mhm.
in Instagram itself, and it'll
Mhm.
pull up all of these different posts. And you'll see the posts, and then you can start to figure out the info. So that's a bit time consuming,
Mhm.
but it's one way to do it. The more common way now is to use a platform.
Mhm.
So you can go to an
Mhm.
influencer marketing platform, and there's, one I point people to start out with is called scrunch.com.
Mhm.
Go to Scrunch. Scrunch actually gives you a free trial version to check
Oh.
out.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you could plug in, I'm looking for fashion, I'm looking for this target demographic in terms of age, where they live,
Mhm.
and it'll
And
pull up
again, the
all of the,
more specific you can get, the
yeah,
better it's going to be.
exactly. Now once you do the paid version, they give you more statistics.
Mm.
But that is using a platform like that. Another one is open influence,
Mhm.
right? Now, if you're more of a bigger brand, you're probably going to be looking at, something like Tracker. If you're
Mhm.
doing business to business, you're going to look at Analytica, because the Analytica and Tracker, they're more for big enterprises.
Mhm.
But if you're a smaller business, you're going to look at Scrunch, maybe Open Influence, or another platform like that. On my blog, I have a post that lists out probably about 200
Wow.
different platforms,
Mm-hmm.
tools to use. Now, the first step is finding a bunch of influencers. Let's say I find a list and I have 50. Well, now I have to sort of vet them, as
Mm-hmm.
I call it, to vet the influencer
Right.
and make sure. So you're going to look at the quality of the content.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to look at how often do they post? How big is the audience? Does the audience engage? They might have a big audience, but maybe
Right.
they don't get a lot
If they're just, the tree falls in the woods and nobody responds.
who cares?
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily want to be on that
Mm-hmm.
influencer's feed, right? You'd rather be on a feed with an influencer as a smaller audience, maybe 10,000 followers, but they're really engaged,
Right.
right? That's where you'd rather be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in my industry, we break those people out into called macro influencers with
Mm-hmm.
really big followings. Then you get the micro influencers, that are like around 100,000 or so. And then you're going to get the nano influencers that are down in the, 10,000 and below.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a matter, and I would work with a group of each
Mm-hmm.
in each. So get a couple of macro. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to be a little more expensive because bigger audience.
Right.
Then get a few in the micro range, and then get a whole bunch in the nano range.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got a whole bunch of influencers that are, have big time followings, and then smaller followings. And
Mm-hmm.
you're going to figure out as you work with them who you like to work with, who's easy to work with. That's very important too. Some will get back to you fast. Some will not get back to you fast. So, and
Some are
these
so busy. Mm-hmm.
right. Well, everybody's busy, but
Right.
what are their priorities? Are their priorities in line with yours?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to figure that out a little bit. I know that there are some tools coming out probably the next year or so that are going to start to rate the influencers based, and the businesses and the marketers who work with them are going to rate them.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's something to look forward to. I think I actually would welcome that because it would
Mm-hmm.
help.
Right.
Yeah, if somebody's
Because
getting a 2-star
you can have
rating,
the biggest influencer in the world, but if they're a pain in the you-know-what to work with,
Right.
you're not going to work with them.
right. Now keep in mind, somebody who's got millions of followers is going to be very expensive to work
Mm-hmm.
with.
Right.
Just keep that in mind. So
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a smaller budget, you're going to look towards the nano influencers or the micro influencers most likely. And you could do perfectly fine with them.
Right.
Statistically, those people have better engagement anyway. And I'll tell you why. And you're going to recognize this, Deb, as soon as you hear it. If you're following Kim Kardashian and you post a question on her Instagram feed, the likelihood of her getting back to you
Responding.
ain't going to respond, right? But with a micro influencer who has maybe 10,000 followers and you ask a question, you have a much higher likelihood of that person responding to you
Right.
in person
Mm-hmm.
and saying, hey, Deb, great question. Here's what I would do if I were you. Boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
That is a connection,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So now Deb is saying, hey, I like this influencer. She
Mhm.
gets back to me. I'm gonna pay attention to her content more because she's
Mhm.
a real person. She's
Mhm.
not just a celebrity anymore, right? I mean,
Right.
so there's that connection, and that's why that works that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, as you were saying, research them. You want to know what all they're doing, and and is it something that you want to work with? I was thinking about this morning because I listened to a radio station here in Atlanta who has a gentleman on who I think used to be a very big name media person here, and he has retired. So now he just does paid spots. Now, I recognize that they're paid spots. I'm not sure all the listeners do, but, I recognize, okay, he's, because it will say sponsored by, it's kind of a given. But and so every day he does a 30-second, 60-second commentary, and it's usually a politically oriented. And, and it's his view. I mean, he is saying this is what I think, all these various things, but I don't like it. It's annoying, and the way he says it is annoying, and just, all sorts of things. And so what happens is when I hear the other people he is advertising for, I immediately think, ugh, do I want to go there because he sponsors them? So, but it comes back to, okay, if I agree 100% with what he says, then, oh my gosh, he must only pick great companies to pitch. So, that's part of doing your research in the influencer.
Great. That's a terrific point. And I work with a lot of larger brands too. For instance, right now I have a contract with SAP Ariba to help them with their external influencer marketing. And we're really, really big brands like that are very cognizant of how they're perceived out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Disney traditionally is looked at as a family-friendly
Right. Wholesome.
brand,
Mm-hmm.
wholesome. So they've gone a little off the reservation in recent years with this or experimented a bit, but traditionally they would not go with anybody who curses, who is, exhibiting bad behavior
Right.
out there.
An actor that does R-rated movies, maybe not.
Right, they'll cut them off or
Mm-hmm.
they just won't work with them. Well, many brands are like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, they have different parameters that they put around what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So any big company I've worked with is very cognizant of that. So
Mm-hmm.
if the influencer is going off, they might be really buttoned down on one platform, but on another platform, on Twitter, for instance, they
Right.
might be ranting and raving about politics. My recommendation in that case is to not work with the influencer
Mm-hmm.
because it's very polarizing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether you agree with what the influencer
Right.
is saying or not is
Mm-hmm.
almost irrelevant, because
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing is you're turning off half of your market. Half the people out there are not going to like it.
Right.
The other half might think it's great, but
Mm-hmm.
do you really want to run the risk of, and what if they take that political ranting and raving and then start it on the other platform that you're actually working with them on, like
Mm-hmm.
Instagram or something like that? What if they start peppering it with that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a red flag to me, a caution flag. And there's all sorts of things. It's like cursing.
Mm-hmm.
If the person curses a lot, that can turn off.
Right.
That can turn you off.
Mm-hmm.
That can say, look, you know what? My customers are not into that. I'm not into that. That's fine if they want to do that, but I'm going to find another influencer
Right.
who doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So these are considerations that are really pretty important. And brands, whether you're a small brand or whether you're a large brand, you've got to really think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the vetting process, as I
Right.
call it. Quality of the
Well,
content, what they're saying, where they're saying
right.
it, how they're saying it.
And you want to build it into your agreement with them, that
Right.
if, for employees, it's a morality clause. And, same type of thing might apply. In fact, we've seen it happen all the time where a celebrity has done something and all of a sudden they lose their endorsements. Sometimes it's a simple thing. Sometimes it's something fairly major, but, the company just says, nah, that's not our brand.
That's not
Good
our
luck
brand.
to you. Mm-hmm.
Right. Those are not the values that
Mm-hmm.
we're about.
Right.
And every business,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a solo entrepreneur all the way up to a major
Mm-hmm.
Fortune 100 company, should think about that. They
Right.
should think about what is my brand about, right? What am I about? What do I stand for? What kind of behavior is acceptable to me? What is not? And that's something that I don't think a lot of smaller businesses really think
Mm-hmm.
enough about.
Right.
And
We
really,
just want to sell our product.
right. They're also worried about sales this
Mm-hmm.
month, but really, this all helps the sales. If you take some time to sit back and just meditate about what's my business about,
Mm-hmm.
what do we really want to do with it here? Is it just about selling stuff to get money? Well, that's a little shallow and vapid. I mean,
Right.
yeah, that's a necessary in life, of course, but usually it's like, well, if I think about why I'm doing something, well, it's to be independent.
Right.
Maybe it's so that I have more time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's, gee, I have a couple of causes that I'd really like to take some of the profits and put them towards.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're getting into your why.
Right.
And the why is all about your values
Mm-hmm.
and what you really cherish.
Mm-hmm.
And every business should look at that.
Right.
And I'll just tell you, most of the major brands do just that.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
they spend a lot of time and money on it, right? And they make sure that their employees understand that their customers understand that. You should too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just a small business, solo entrepreneur even, sit down over a weekend and just sketch this stuff out. Just write it down. Turn off all distractions.
No Facebook.
No Facebook, none of it. Just turn it all off.
Mm-hmm.
Sit out on the porch and listen to the birds and the wind in the trees, and just write down the things that are important, and it'll help you figure out what your values are and what you're really about and why you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
Always go back to those core values, and really those will help you in whatever marketing you're doing, including
Right.
influence marketing.
Good golly, Tom, you have spent the whole hour and we didn't get to talk about something that I really, really, really want to talk about. So we're just going to have you on again. And that's how to kind of become an influencer.
Oh, sure.
It's,
Yeah.
You want to be an influencer for other people, or more importantly, you want to be an influencer for your own company. And because I think that's important too, is how do people, how can we become our own influencers? It's not just about having, a certain number of people following us on Facebook and all of those things, but, how do we become that influencer? So we'll just have you on again.
Hey, I'd love to. That's a great topic.
Oh yeah, because it is, and I mean, there are people who I'm sure are thinking, I could do this. I can be the blogger mom, or, all of those various things, because it's, it is a business, let's be honest. And so I think that's a great topic for us to discuss at another time.
I'd love to. That's a great topic. A lot of people are asking that question these days.
Right. And folks, spoiler alert, it's not just to get free stuff.
Amen to that.
Cool. Well, Tom, oh my gosh, between now and when we chat again, how do people reach you and connect with you online?
Well, there's a few different ways. One, I'm on LinkedIn, right? And I'm there as T. Augenthaler. You can find me. I'm on Twitter as T. Augenthaler again. And then I have a website called theinfluencemarketer.com.
Okay.
And that's where I blog and kind of try to share ideas and knowledge with everybody about the industry and how to do things and whatnot. And I got that blog post on there with like I said, about 200 plus tools and platforms that people can use to find influencers.
Right. Well, and I was reading through and there was a great one about how to find that influencer and hire them. What are you looking for? All of those various things. So great resources on your website.
Thank you.
Well, Tom, as I said, we are at the top of the hour. So what are some final thoughts you would like to leave everyone with?
The final thought is like influencer marketing is really, if you think about influencers or working with influencers for your business, just think of it in terms of it's part of your overall marketing strategy. Don't think of it as a separate strategy so much. Just think of it as, what are we already doing? And how can we wrap influencers into that? Maybe you're going to events. Maybe you've got trade shows you go to. Well, a lot of influencers go to those now. Maybe you could hook up with a couple there, and meet up with them and sit down, have a coffee, maybe invite them to lunch or something, whatever you want to do. So think of it as wrapping it into what you're already doing, because it could seem overwhelming otherwise. And just remember, there's a bit of a learning curve, but that's okay. Anything new requires a little bit of learning. So give yourself the okay that it's going to take a little while to understand this. It might take a couple of weeks, might take a couple of months, no big deal, right? I don't have to know it in 24 hours. And the other thing is that if you get a chance to go to some marketing conferences like Content Marketing World or Social Media World, and now there are some actual influencer marketing conferences starting to pop up here in the United States, make an effort to go to some of those. You will learn more by talking to somebody or listening to somebody for 15, 30 minutes than you will reading 20 blog posts, right? Sitting down and just having a conversation with somebody at one of these conferences or going to a session or workshop, believe me, you'll get a lot more. You'll come out of it and you'll be like, wow, now I understand so much more.
Great. I love it. And I can't wait to put some of these practices in use, because it's a great way to reach people. But again, it has to be very strategic. It can't just be, ooh, I like that person, I want them to talk about what I do. It really is about thinking about, as you said, how it becomes part of your marketing plan.
Exactly.
So until next time, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a wonderful time talking with Tom Augenthaler. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer. Join us next time for more real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
You've been listening to C-Suite Radio. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.